So this vote yes for the amendment. So you're, yeah.
All those that we've all been.
I remember.
You went on vacation?
Oh, yeah.
No?
Rick?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Winnebago County Board meeting. Tonight is Thursday, February 9th, 2023, approximately 6 p.m. Tonight's invocation and pledge of allegiance is by Board Member Joe Hoffman. Please stand.
Let us pray. Thank you, dear Lord, for all the blessings that you bestow on us every day. We ask that you help guide us to see past any anger or vengeance that may be present. Help us to show a willingness to work together, show compromise for the betterment of the citizens of Winnebago County. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Thompson, do we have any adjustments to the agenda this evening?
No changes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. And before I call roll, I just want to acknowledge former board member Fred Westcott is in attendance. Welcome, Mr. Westcott. All right, Clerk Gummow, can you please call the roll?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will start with Ms. Fellers,
Men are missing. Bars.
Mrs. Gorel,
Present.
Mr. Guevara, Ms. Hansard, Mr. Hoffman, Mr. Lindmark,
Sony.
Mr. McCarthy,
And, what's his name?
Mr. McDonald, Mr. Neighbors, Mr. Penny,
Here.
Mr. Salgado, Mr. Scroll, Mr. Sweeney,
Present.
Mr. Tassoni, Mr. Thompson,
Here.
Mr. Webster, Mr. Arena, Mr. Booker,
Present.
Mr. Butita,
Here.
Mrs. Crosby. I see Mr. Guevara has entered. Mr. Guevara?
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, 16 board members present, 4 board members absent.
Thank you. We do have a quorum this evening. Move on our agenda for public participation. I'm going to read a brief statement and then call up our speaker. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes. Speakers may not address zoning matters which are pending before the ZBA, zoning committee, or the county board. Personnel matters or pending or threatened litigation may not be addressed in open session. An individual may speak a maximum of 3 times per calendar year on the same topic. This prohibition shall include the repetition of the same topic in a statement on what is purported to be a different topic. Personal attacks or inappropriate language of any sort will not be tolerated. So tonight we have one speaker, Mr. Bruce Erickson. He's going to give us an update on the 17th Circuit Therapy Dog Program in Winnebago County. Please come forward.
Good evening. Good evening, board
Good evening.
members.
Good evening.
Lori. This is kind of a little update. Fred back there heard our program probably about 2-3 years ago. At that time, we were sitting at about 14 dogs. Currently, when I say dogs, I mean dog teams.
Currently, we're sitting at 22. I have 3 in process waiting for background checks, so that'll put us at 25. And when I go on and tell you every place that we're working, you will understand why we have so many dogs. My name is Bruce Erickson. I'm the executive director of the 17th Circuit Therapy Dog Program. I founded the program back in November of 2013. And at that time, you have to prove to the judges that it's a good thing to have dogs in the courthouse. It took about 3-4 years to do that. And back in 2014 or 17, actually Joseph McGraw made us an official part of the 17th Circuit Therapy Dogs, is what he named us, and that's what we've had ever since. At that point, we only had 4 dog teams. So, I mean, it's been a slow progression, but lately we've grown quite a bit. We currently visit, this is going to be kind of unbelievable for you. 4 high schools, Auburn, East, Guilford, Roosevelt, Summit Academy, 2 middle schools, Marshall Middle School, RISA, and 8 elementaries, Conklin, Constance Lane, Froberg, Lathrop, Lewis Lemon, Marshall, Spring Creek, and Welsh. You might ask, why do we visit so many schools? Good question. It all kind of started about 2 years ago when the schools were having problems started out at East High. One got T-boned in a car. I'm sure everybody remembers that. One was shot about a month later. Guilford, one was shot a month after that. 2 were shot in a car in Auburn, 2 after about a month after that. That is why I got started with our program working with the schools. The school district would send counselors in, I would send dogs in. Some kids do not want to talk to a counselor, but they will talk to a dog. That's all right. It's getting them to express themselves, and it's kind of neat how that works out. So that's kind of why we got started in the schools. Last week, I just received a call from 2 of the newer schools that stated we have problems with a couple kids that are doing cutting. Okay, you bring a dog in, that allows them to speak to the dog when the counselor's there, and it works. It's happening. So this is a good positive note. Besides the schools, we're currently visiting the courthouse, the Family Peace Center, which we have coverage every day, Carrie Lynn as need be, Juvenile Detention Center, we visit that on a monthly basis, 3 police districts, we visit them monthly, Sheriff's Department as needed. We also have made special visits to the Belvedere Assembly Plant. Believe it or not, before they made their announcement, it was a health fair, and it kind of helped relax the people that were there. The other thing which we did just last Saturday is went up to Bigfoot Beach High School, where there was a Future Business Leaders of America.
Excuse me, Mr. Erickson, if you could wrap up soon, you're past their 3 minutes.
So we had 6 dogs up there. But our dogs do get out there in the schools, autism classrooms, plus classrooms, always go to counselors' offices. And if you take a look at the flyer I gave you, there is a QR code that will help you kind of see everything we do in our program. If there's any questions, be more than happy to answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate it, Mr. Erickson. Great work. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Erickson, if you can acknowledge your team here, we can give if you want to state your names. Yep.
Claudia, and this is Whisper.
Hi, Whisper. Hi, Claudia. Very nice.
I'm Dawn, and this is Ethel, and we visit Constance Lane on Others.
Very nice.
I'm Dora, and this is Jake Jr., and we
Thank you.
I'm Jennifer, and this is Daisy. We've been with the program about 3 or 4 years.
Very good, thank you. Let's give him a round of applause. One more. Woo! Look at this one. Oh, very nice. Great job. Thank you. I think the county board might need a therapy dog some evenings. Well, that's good. We'll call you when we need one. And the staff, too. All right, we'll move on our agenda. Item number 6 is the approval of minutes. Can I entertain a motion to approve the minutes of January 12th, 2023, and lay over the January 26th, 2023 minutes? Mr. Hoffman motions, or a second by Mr. Thompson. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Hearing and seeing none. Are there any board members opposed to that motion? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Number 7 is the consent agenda. Can I entertain a motion for the raffle report and the auditor's report? Motion by Mr. Guevara, second by Mr. Speaker McCarthy. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, are there any board members opposed to that motion? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Move on to appointments. Appointments per county board rules, board chairman appointments require a 30-day layover unless there is a suspension of rule. Tonight, we have the Winnebago County Community Mental Health Board. Annual compensation is none. For Mohammed Yanis, it's a new appointment to fulfill the remainder of the 4-year term, which expires January 2024. And Mr. Tim Neighbors is also a reappointment for his term to January 2026. Okay. Moving on to reports of standing committees. Finance Committee. Mr. Butita.
I'm glad you're going back.
All right, this evening, Finance Committee has 8 items to bring before you. First one, an ordinance providing for the payment of certain outstanding bonds of the County of Winnebago and authorizing and directing the execution of an escrow agreement in connection thereof. And I so move.
I believe we'd need a suspension of rules first, Mr. Butita. Move to suspend by Mr. Butita. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Thompson. Are there any board members opposed to the suspension of rules for this item? Hearing none, the rules are suspended. Mr. Thompson, or Mr. Butita.
Okay, then I move for the passage of that amendment, or that resolution then.
Moved by
Or
moved by Mr. Butita, second by Ms. Crosby. Discussion. Mr. Penny.
I would like to propose an amendment. Everybody has it in front of them. If you take a look at it, if you haven't, I tried to talk to several of you.
Do we have a second for the amendment? Second by Mr. Guevara. Mr. Penny.
The amendment I would like to propose, everybody has in front of them, is a 3-page document. If you turn to page 2, I would like to propose the removal in the second paragraph, starting in line 3, there's a comma and the addition of the word "and." Slide down to the 4th line, and I would like to remove "and" into the 5th line, ending at Series 2020B, comma. 3rd page, I would like, you guys can see it, all stuck in red. I would like to start at 1,510,000 and strike all that paragraph, including the chart, down to 2029 across. And just, if anybody wants, I'll make that amendment. We can get into discussion, I can talk on it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for the amendment. We have discussion. Ms. Gorel.
I don't have one of those. I don't even know what you're talking about. You're talking about this one? About this one?
Start on 2nd page.
So I walked in here at 5 minutes to 6. This is sitting on my desk. Why aren't these sent out to us a day in advance so we have time to read them? I don't even know what he's talking about.
Yeah, I agree, and I can discuss it a little bit. There's some language that came with the bonds at caucus on Monday night. Is the first time I saw it too, Ms. Gorel, and there was a lot of questions that were raised. This amendment does take care of 2 of the 3 bonds that we were looking at originally paying off. There's still a savings to the county of $617,000 by addressing the 2 bonds that we can tonight without getting into the MOU that was attached to the 3rd bond. So that's the meat and potatoes of it.
So what page are you on?
Page 2.
Okay. I would like to lay this over so we have time to look at it. Do you mind?
It literally addresses paying off 2 bonds tonight, and that's what we're looking at, versus originally paying off the 3 bonds and having an MOU attached to it. So what this amendment does is it ultimately saves the county $617,000, but we're gonna push off the MOU in that 3rd bond, which was the smallest bond. But, I mean, that's what's behind it.
Ms. Gorel, yes, Mr. Petito.
I think there's some urgency to the passage of the 2 bonds, and Mr. Rickard probably can address that.
Mr. Rickard.
Okay, thank you. What we do have is an opportunity here to defease 2 of our larger bonds, the 2016A, which will save us $245,000, the 2016D, which will save us $368,000. We had bond counsel rewrite the ordinance to meet the requirement that we would defease those 2 bonds. The 3rd bond is about $67,000. Apparently, there are some additional questions concerning the MOU that the board members, certain board members would like readdressed. So we're going to delay the defeasement of that bond for a later time to clarify that MOU.
Does that help Ms. Gorel to understand what's happening?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
Am I happy with it?
please.
I understand this correctly, it's because of the MOU? Is that the rationale for this?
I believe so.
I'm asking the question.
That is the reason why I'm presenting this amendment, yes.
Right, so if I may, I think we hashed this out in finance for those that were there. And I thought we were in the consensus that we were moving forward with this. So, I don't know what the concerns are, obviously, if the MOU or whatever is gonna prevent, and there's questions there, I guess I just don't understand. I think we need to move forward and pay these off.
Mr. Guevara?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Concern with the MOU is shared ownership of a building in which there's a division of responsibilities that is...
Speak up, Mr. Guevara, and the mic.
Sure. The purpose of the MOU is, or the purpose of this amendment is because of concerns with the MOU that include shared ownership of a building in which the responsibilities haven't necessarily been fleshed out. There were members of the Republican caucus who had questions and asked for more time to at least address some of those issues. And so that's the purpose for Mr. Penny's amendment. I, for one, I'm offering the same courtesy to Mr. Penny that we offered to Mr. Scroll with his amendment to the contracts at our last meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Guevara?
Yeah, no, like I said, we talked about this in finance. I thought we had an agreement moving forward on that's why it passed. So I'm just, just out of, for that concern. But I don't think there's anything wrong with, moving forward and then adjusting the MOU at any time. Dr. Martell can maybe address that with her board. I don't know, can answer that question if they're...
Go back to Mr. Penny, and then if Dr. Martell would like to respond, we'll ask her.
Yeah, I will just say, this amendment addresses the largest chunk of the bonds to save the largest amount of money tonight. With the MOU questions that came up, I think we really started a good conversation. Unfortunately, not all of us were able to be part of the conversation in finance. So I think we're close. It's just there was a lot of questions that came up on Monday night in caucus. And once we started talking amongst ourselves, it really, we're trying to see what we could still do to save the largest amount of money tonight and get that still moving forward with maybe looking at a 30-day, 60-day, window to try to kick around some of these concerns and really get some answers on them.
Sure.
So there's nothing more or less behind it. It really did come down to just a substantial amount of questions that came out Monday night.
Sure. So if I may respond to that real quick. Bond counsel was reached out. This arrangement was made. I have that concern, right? So that can be, someone can ask or require administration or someone else to make those changes, right? Prior to this, I understand amendment, whatever can occur. That's my only concern, right? And the second piece that I would like to ask is, Mr. Rickard, if we were to move forward with also the health department bond, do we have to, is it gonna cause any issues with, again, if we pass it that way? Because bond council has made changes, right, to the ordinance?
We could pass either ordinance. You could pass all three, or you can pass the new one that's been amended. So it's at the discretion of the county board.
Right, but it's not gonna cause any issue? Okay.
No, it shouldn't cause any issue.
Because we already reached out to bond council, right?
Correct.
Make those changes. So that's my only issue here that I have. Other than that, I agree, we're gonna save money, it's gonna come down later or sooner, but that was just my concern from my perspective, that it was just not taken into consideration at the last minute and having someone else, reach out to bond council without consulting the county board as a whole. Once we already had made the decision through the committee. That's where I'm getting at.
Okay,
Thank you.
Mr. Sweeney?
I guess my comments might seem redundant now, but I was just going to address Mr. Salgado's legitimate concern, being a member of the Finance Committee and having voted for it in that setting. It was that basically it was made aware more or less after the fact that breathing room existed that we didn't know we had at the time of the committee. So that's why I'm supporting this.
If you could speak up, Mr. Sweeney?
To speak directly to Mr. Salgado's point, which is a good point, it was that at the time of the vote in finance, basically breathing room existed on this issue that we didn't know existed at the time. That was discovered after the fact. So that's why it might seem odd the way it happened through committee until now, but there is a method to that madness for sure that's of well intent, so.
Ms. Crosby?
Everyone's talking about we have big concerns and a lot of questions came up. What are your big concerns and what are the questions?
Mr. Penny?
I haven't heard a rationale, except for we have questions.
Ms. Crosby, I can tell you one of the biggest questions I have is ownership or giving up ownership as far as from Winnebago County. The health department is a department of Winnebago County, and I haven't obviously been around long enough to know the direct relationship between us and our health department, but I want to make sure before we are handing over any kind of tenancy ownership or ownership of buildings or any type of agreements through an MOU that they're for the right reasons. And, Salgado brought up a good point. Mr. Salgado brought up a good point about this coming up very quickly. I had not heard or seen anything on the MOU until Monday night. And I believe there's a lot of others that hadn't seen or heard about the MOU until Monday night. That came very quickly. With the urgency to save the county money, it was, in my idea, to try to get at least the two largest bonds paid off tonight to save the largest amount of money to the taxpayers. So the urgency on coming up with the amendment was really to address concerns that came up about an MOU. It was also concerns to still save our constituents the most amount of money possible tonight. And I feel like this was the best happy medium that we could come up with, and that's why I proposed it. There were other concerns that came up as well, but they all circled around the MOU. I hope that helps.
Mr. Butita?
I would just also add that this did pass out of committee unanimously, but our understanding at that point in time were all three bonds were together and could not be separated, and nobody wanted to delay the bonds. So it was only Actually, yesterday, going into today, that we understood that they could actually be separated. So that's the reason for the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Butita. Any other discussion? No? Are there any board members opposed to this amendment?
Yes.
Please mark Ms. Gorel as a no. All of the members as a yes. Mr. Butita, goes back to you for,
All right, I move for approval of the amended ordinance.
moved by Mr. Butita for the amended ordinance, second by Mr. Penny. Discussion. Mr. Guevara, I'm sorry, no? Okay, any other discussion on this motion to approve the amended ordinance? All right, please cast a yes for all members present. Thank you. Mr. Butita.
Next, we have an ordinance to be read in for the first time for approval of a budget amendment for the circuit clerk of $141,088.
Moving to suspend, or are you laying that one over?
Just reading it in.
Okay, that one gets laid over.
We also have another one for first reading for layover, ordinance for approval of a budget adjustment to the sheriff's office in the tune of $289,802.
It's also being laid over. Mr. Butita.
Next, we have a resolution authorizing execution of a collective bargaining agreement with the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, the AFL-CIO, Illinois Council 31, Local 473, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Butita, second by Mr. Sweeney. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Are there any board members opposed to this resolution? Very good. Please cast yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
Next, we have a resolution authorizing execution of a collective bargaining agreement with the Illinois Fraternal Order of Police Labor Council, representing deputies in the office of Winnebago County Sheriff's Office, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Butita, second by Mr. McCarthy. Discussion. Hearing none. Are there any board members opposed to this resolution? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
All right, next we have a resolution authorizing wage increases for non-bargaining unit employees of the County of Winnebago, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Butita, second by Mr. Sweeney. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Are there any board members opposed to this resolution? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
I have two items from old business we can address now.
Yes.
Okay. So for approval then, we have an ordinance for a budget amendment for the Circuit Court bailiff, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Butita, second by Mr. Thompson. Is there any discussion on this ordinance? Hearing none. Are there any board members opposed to this ordinance? Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
All right, finally, we have an ordinance for the approval of a budget amendment for a court liaison position.
Moved by
I so move.
Moved by Mr. Butita, second by Mr. Sweeney. Is there any discussion on this ordinance? Very good. Any board members opposed to this ordinance? Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
All right, that concludes our report.
Thank you, Mr. Butita. Yes.
Just real quick, I just want to thank the staff for the contract negotiations. I know it was very contentious, a large part. We still have obviously the correctional officers piece of it, of the contract, but I just want to commend them for their hard work, Ms. Vaughn and our outside counsel on that. Good feedback on that, I heard, so congrats on doing that. Thank you very much.
We're all very appreciative, and congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Salgado. Zoning Committee, Mr. Webster.
Thank you, Chairman. We have no report.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Economic Development Committee, Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have three items tonight in the Economic Development Committee. The first item is a resolution granting authority to the Winnebago County Board Chairman to execute the documents necessary to complete a loan for $50,000 from the revolving loan fund to Rock City Acquisitions LLC, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Sweeney, second by Mr. Lindmark. Any discussion? Hearing none. Are there any board members opposed to this resolution? Very good. Please cast yes for all members present. When you put your head up, you get seconded.
Hand up all night.
Mr. Sweeney.
Item number 2 is a resolution granting authority to the Winnebago County Board Chairman to execute the documents necessary to complete a loan for $32,500 from the revolving loan fund to Dwayne Tentler, doing business as Factory Appliance Repair, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Sweeney, seconded by Mr. Lindmark. Very good. Is there any discussion on this resolution? Hearing none, are there any board members opposed to this resolution? Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we go to item 3, I will mention that Mr. Dornbush and I have been chatting, and we think it would be good for Mr. Phelps to come in and maybe give a presentation to the board, especially with new members, an update on all about the revolving loan fund as an educational experience for us all. So we'll be asking him to come in at some point and talk to the group.
Very good.
The final item here is the resolution approving $25,000 from host fees to the Winnebago County Board Chairman to support nonprofit community organizations and outreach, and I so move and would like to speak to it.
Moved by Mr. Sweeney, second by Mr. Guevara. Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess the thought behind this is that, you know, we all have our $1,000 of discretionary funds through the host fee program, and it was brought up in discussion, and I think correctly so, that the chairman of this board is elected countywide and should enjoy, you know, the same privilege that we have as board members. So that was the intent and spirit of this resolution, and I would have full faith that he would make those discretionary choices wisely and represent us all very well in that endeavor.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Is there any other discussion on this resolution? Or not? Squirrel?
Do we still, as individual board members, still get $1,000, in discretional money?
Yes, ma'am.
I haven't heard about it for quite a few years.
If I may, it's funny you bring that up because Mr. Dornbush and I were also talking that a very, very small amount of that money is actually utilized by the full board, less than 25% in recent times, but it is available to utilize.
It would be nice if we were advised when this is available to us to remind us that we have this money so we can use it. Would really appreciate that. And I think many board members sitting here, especially new ones, would like to know they have this advantage.
I couldn't agree with you more. I was surprised to find out we had that ability when I was appointed to the board back in April.
Thank you.
And I'm reminding you all right now.
Okay.
And if you want more information, Mr. Dornbush or Mr. Rickert can provide that.
All right. That concludes, unless there's any other discussion. I'm sorry, did we vote on that item yet?
We did.
Okay, so that was still part of discussion. All right, any other discussion for this item? Are there any board members opposed to this resolution? Very good, please cast yes for all members present. Mr. Sweeney.
That concludes our report. We'll have a meeting on Monday, the 13th at 5:30 on the 3rd floor of the admin building. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Operation and Administrative Committee, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Due to the amendment in finance tonight, our resolution is no longer necessary, so I request that it be removed from the agenda.
Okay. Under Operation and Administrative Committee, item number 2, the resolution authorizing the use of Winnebago County Health Department surplus funds to pay off the bond on 555 North Court Street has been removed for the agenda because of the First Amendment. Mr. Penny.
I would like to just make a quick comment on that, and I appreciate everybody passing the amendment earlier. And with the laying over of this, I just, again, as a newer member, still learning the process, it's my understanding that staff needs to get this stuff to the chairman needs to get this stuff to the caucus chairs as soon as possible so we can have real conversation on this stuff moving forward in the future. I don't know where the breakdown is. I don't know where the breakdown was. I'm just asking to please look at the processes that are laid out in the policy, and that way we can, again, have real conversation on this in the future within our caucuses.
Thank you, Mr. Penny. Okay, we move on to Public Works Committee. Is there a report
Thank you,
from
Chairman.
Works?
Public Works, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Webster.
Okay, as Vice Chair of Public Works, we have no report.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Public Safety and Judiciary Committee, Mr. Lindmark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No report. We will be meeting on the 15th.
Very good, thank you, Mr. Lindmark. We've already went through unfinished business. Is there any new business in front of the county board this evening? New business? Announcements and communications, Clerk Gamow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The items listed below were received as correspondence.
Is there any communications from board members this evening? Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say a few words. I had the privilege of doing a ride-along with the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department TAC unit yesterday, actually, from about 6 o'clock in the afternoon until midnight. And I just wanted to, of course, commend the whole department. I know that those officers are all very busy. I want to commend the TAC unit in particular, since that's who I spent time with, and that what I saw in that 6 hours on a sleepy Wednesday afternoon in winter really is just a reminder of how much challenge we have in this community. When we talk about resources and budgets and things like that, yes, numbers are important, but resources to help people execute their mission correctly is also very important. And in that 6 hours, it was a consistent, besides going from place to place, dealing with all kinds of situations that you don't read about. You only read about the tip of the iceberg, but there's a whole body of incidents that occur on a daily basis that the public does not hear about. Consistent calls for involving violence, from one citizen to another, both domestic and otherwise. Several calls involving, hearing the dispatch go back and forth about, needles hanging out of arms and whatnot, people being non-responsive. And, this was a Wednesday afternoon in February. And so I just, what I also saw was these officers treating individuals, even individuals that they were having to take to jail, with the utmost of respect. In an odd twist of irony, I would suspect that for some of these folks, they were probably treated with the most respect and courtesy by the very individuals that were taking them to jail for the crimes they committed. And I think that's just a wonderful reflection on this government and the Sheriff's Department. And I wanted to acknowledge that in open session, that it's a good thing. And I certainly support the reintroduction of that TAC unit operating in and out of the city of Rockford, by the way. I know there's been discussion about that. I'm a Rockford resident. I'm a city and county taxpayer, and as such, appreciate the efforts of the department to not limit itself to any certain geographic areas, but go where is needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Mr. Lindmark, had your hand up?
Yeah, 8 years ago, I lost my brother today. So to piggyback off what Mr. Sweeney said, everybody please keep your first responders in your prayers for everything they see day in and day out for years. Just appreciate them. Say prayers tonight for all of our first responders, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lindmark. Mr. Webster? Moved by Mr. Webster, second by Mr. Thompson to adjourn. Any discussion on the adjournment? Oh, nobody wants to discuss that, huh? All right. All in favor of the adjournment, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.